So I still get asked fairly frequently about roadmaps for learning new skills and where do I start? How do I do this? How can I possibly start learning this without this understanding, etc., etc. And I have been over that before in the video about learning new skills and avoiding burnout. But I thought what might be helpful is going over what my learning journey with Linux has looked like and how I arrived at this point in my career. One of the things that I want to look into at the moment, have spent a bit of time with, is seeing what our friends at Canonical have been doing the last few cycles. So I've installed Ubuntu 23.04 server on my R610, and I'm just going to take a look at that as an operating system, as a server platform, and see what it offers today. The last time I worked with Ubuntu in an enterprise capacity was in 2017, 2018. So I thought it's probably time I take another look at it, see what they've been up to. And then I wouldn't mind checking out like Charm Birkenstack and Kubernetes and seeing what those options from Canonical look like these days. Which gives me that good opportunity to talk about my learning journey, because when I started with Linux, it was 2004 and I was 14. And a family friend of ours, a guy my dad went to school with, reached out, and he was sending me computer hardware at the time, like graphics cards, etc. And he said, "Have you heard of Linux?" And I hadn't. So he sent me 4 CDs, not DVDs, CDs with Fedora Core 3 on them. So that's, my first Linux experience was Fedora Core 3, which was Hindenburg, I think it was. Let's look it up if we're going to do this. Let's do it properly. Wikipedia, Fedora. Swap over this screen. Okay, so Fedora Linux, Fedora Core 3, Hindenburg. This was, my first experience with Linux was with Hindenburg, and I used that for a few months. It had, I've got to find some screenshots of this. It just truly sucked me in. I really enjoyed the community aspect of it. The more I Googled about it, the more it felt like this kind of niche, real enthusiast club. That's it. Look at this. Beautiful operating system. What an experience. I still had the Red Hat for all of the application launcher and everything like that. It was really cool. So I used Fedora Core 3 for a couple of months, and then it was pretty intimidating. It was really tough for me to learn about Linux in that environment. I'd break something and it was hard to find information about Fedora on the internet. So I found Fedora quite intimidating. Learning about RPM and trying to get things installed and up and running, it was quite intimidating for someone just starting with Linux. So the same guy said to me, "Hey, have you heard of Ubuntu? Maybe you could give Ubuntu a try." So Ubuntu at the time were actually sending out those CDs, so you could go on the website and click "Send me Ubuntu," and they would send you a CD and you could install that. It was really cool. So I got Ubuntu 4.10, Warthog. Oh, look at that. And I installed Ubuntu, and I actually used Ubuntu for the next 9 years. So I would order the CDs every time there was a new update, an update from the CDs, because the internet, although, I don't know, I shouldn't be too mean, the internet has improved drastically since then in Australia. It's still crap, but at least I can download an operating system now, whereas back then I had no chance of downloading this. It would have taken months. So I ordered the CDs and I would install them. I tried just Ubuntu, and then I found out they had a KDE spin, and then I would get the Kubuntu CD. Let's see if I can find the actual pictures of the CDs, because they were really cool. Shit. Oh, there they are. Look at that. There we go. So, oh man, so cool. You get, I tried Ubuntu and I would use that to, I don't think I ever upgraded as such. I think I would just reinstall at that time. But Kubuntu had me hooked. I really enjoyed the KDE experience. Maybe I was coming from Windows for most of my life, so a lot of Kubuntu. I never went back to Windows really. Like I would dual boot my desktop PC and play like Call of Duty and stuff on my desktop PC, but every laptop was just pure Linux. Unless it had a GPU that could play games, then they always run Ubuntu or Kubuntu, you know. Yeah, so I used Ubuntu until 2014 when I started as a hardware maintenance engineer at a IT company here. Well, they're based in Melbourne, but they've got a branch here in Brisbane. And I installed Ubuntu, and people made fun of me, so I installed Fedora again, which was my first experience coming back to Fedora. Which in 2014? So I think I installed Fedora 20 was the version that I installed at the time. And it was actually really cool to come back to Fedora after all that time and just see what had happened in that distro. It was a really good experience, and it kind of reinvigorated my passion for Linux. You know, I guess I kind of settled into the Ubuntu life, working with apt and stuff, and that's what I knew. So it was cool to come back and then learn about Yum, and it was kind of around that time when the transition from Yum to DNF was happening as well. So getting back into learning about RPMs and Yum repos instead of apt sources, etc., was a really cool experience for me. But yeah, I guess it's always been a passion, and this is what I said in the other video. You've got to have a passion to learn about it in depth, because when you're doing it, it can be so frustrating. You know, like that first experience with Fedora Core for me was really frustrating. I just couldn't do anything at all. So then, you know, lucky I didn't give up and go back to Windows. I went to Ubuntu, and Ubuntu was a little bit of a softer landing for me, I guess. I found it a little easier to learn more about Linux, and there was a real community building around Ubuntu at the time. A lot of really passionate people were kind of gathering around the canonical Ubuntu community at that time, and it was really easy to get involved in communities and talk to people and learn things. So it was such a cool experience. I'm so grateful that I had that experience. I'm so grateful that Peter sent those Fedora Core CDs, and you know, really fostered that passion for learning about computers when I was so young. Yeah, and I mean, just everything since then has all been Linux for me. Obviously, I'm using a MacBook right now, so you know, I don't have anything. I went through a big period of hating Apple. I don't have anything against Mac OS either. The only operating system I really don't enjoy using is Windows. I just cannot stand Windows. But yeah, anything POSIX compliant is okay with me. So yeah, basically from Fedora 20 until today, I've been using Fedora again. So about another 9 years. I'm pretty equal on how long I've used Ubuntu and how long I've used Fedora for. So you know, that means it has been a while. I did manage some Ubuntu systems at my previous job. We had, you know, a handful of Ubuntu from like 12.04 to I think 17 or 18 was the last one, the oldest one that I was managing when I left that job. And since then, the only real dabbling with Ubuntu I've had is like I used on the Raspberry Pis because it's a little bit easier to, you know, get everything for a Raspberry Pi when it comes from apt repositories. You don't need to build things, etc. So yeah, I really wanted to give it another go. I'm probably not going to desktop it at the moment. My work laptop runs Fedora. It's very well set up for everything that I do today in my current work, so I probably won't run it there. But maybe a desktop VM or something like that, just to see what they've done with GNOME. I know they've made a lot of changes. I'm really appreciative for Canonical coming back to GNOME over Unity. They brought a lot back to the GNOME community. And yeah, definitely going to check out the server version. So I might just wrap this video up by taking a really quick look at Ubuntu 23.04 server. So one thing that I did have a problem with was that it took forever to boot this. So I just wanted to take a quick look at why it took so long to boot. So we use systemd, analyze, blame. I know Canonical's been fairly heavy into the adoption of systemd constructs like networkd, resolved. You know, they've really dived in, even where CentOS and Fedora haven't yet. So if we do a blame and see what took all the time here. So it took 2 minutes for So let's do systemd analyze time and just see what. So the kernel was up in 1 minute, 4 minutes for user space. That's a long time. So 6 minutes in total. So if you compare that, for example, to just a Fedora VM. So this Fedora VM, is up in 2 minutes. So, I mean, this is only timing after the hardware is actually booted. So I'm not sure. Oh, that says graphical user target. It should be graphical user target. Let's just reboot and we'll see how long it takes to come up this time. Maybe it's just the first time coming up. I noticed there was like a message of the day service there before when I checked, and that took about 5 minutes to start, and it just seems to be some kind of advertising. It had something about microcates in there, so it runs like a bash script that curls something from Canonical. Probably don't want that, but we'll take a look and see how long it takes to start this time. Here's that wallpaper. You wanted to bask in the nostalgias as the Fedora Core 3 wallpaper. Great wallpaper. There's a certain kind of poetry in that, we come from Fedora Core and then we come back to Fedora Core OS. Pretty nice evolution. See that server booting up behind me there now. I guess I'd be interested. I know that I don't have many people that watch these videos, but I'd be super interested to know, like, if you're using Ubuntu and what you're using it for today. It's one of the things that I think Canonical has done really well is they've got really great exposure into the university system all around the world. We have graduates leave their computer science degrees in basically every country, and they're leaving with that Ubuntu experience. That's what they use for a lot of their degree. It's what they've done a lot of their assignments on. It's what they're comfortable with. They walk into their professional careers and that's what they would be most comfortable using. Definitely in like my previous role, we would have university graduates come in and you would say, we need to set up a HA proxy load balancer, and they would go away and download Ubuntu and set it up on Ubuntu, and like, okay, but this customer uses RHEL, so we kind of need to do it on RHEL. Can we do it again in RHEL? But they were definitely far more comfortable if they were allowed to use Ubuntu, and I think that gives Canonical a really, really strong position if they can then somehow leverage that to get more exposure into that professional world. Obviously, Red Hat's the incumbent at the moment, but I think Canonical is really positioned well if they can really make Ubuntu that really stable, long-lived OS. They do a lot of stuff around managing platforms for you as well, so they're not just going to sell you OpenStack. They can also manage it for you if you don't have the skills or expertise within your business to do that. And that's something, again, my previous career, considering that was something that weighed heavily on me when I was like figuring out whether I wanted to propose Red Hat OpenStack platform or Canonical's OpenStack. I was like, what skills do we have in the team today? How much more does it really cost us to get Canonical to manage it if we can't get the skills within the team that we have today? Ultimately, I decided with Red Hat OpenStack platform, it just gave us a bit more flexibility with the multi-region data centers that we needed at the time. But yeah, definitely Canonical, big contender in that space. I'd like to see, I genuinely would like to see them strengthen that position across all of their offerings, and that's kind of why I wanted to take a look at what they're doing with OpenStack and Kubernetes and just see what their offerings are like. For Kubernetes, last time I deployed it on top of OpenStack, so I had TripleO deployed and then I deployed Charm Kubernetes on top of OpenStack. It created like 10 VMs, which is that's just crazy to me. Like, I don't think Kubernetes will scale to a size where that would be necessary. You know what I mean? Like, Kubernetes has its own set of limitations, particularly around like etcd and how big you can scale your deployments to. I guess when you're making Kubernetes deployments or OpenShift deployments or whatever you're deploying based on Kubernetes, more smaller clusters is going to be better than, a fewer larger clusters, and then managing them with something like Open Cluster Manager or Advanced Cluster Manager if you're an OpenShift customer. I think that's a better way to go than trying to scale humongous Kubernetes clusters, because you seem to run into scalability issues. etcd is just really not the right backing store for a humongous deployment of Kubernetes. But I'm keen to check it out again. I'd like to use this node and use Juju to deploy Charm Kubernetes again here, and maybe incorporate the Raspberry Pis and just see what that ecosystem looks like. Maybe I can cut down the deployment to not have 10 VMs and maybe try and consolidate some of those roles. I think there was like a dedicated cert manager, a dedicated ingress node. Definitely if you've got heaps of ingress coming into your cluster, maybe that makes sense. But definitely not a dedicated cert manager node. I'm not sure why that would be necessary. I'll just run that on the control plane. And I can't remember what else there was. Maybe there was 3 dedicated nodes for etcd. I'm not sure if that's necessary either. I know etcd does have performance issues. You really need to run it on the right storage. This is all spinning disks, so I'm not giving it the ideal I/O availability that it might like. But I'm keen to see if I can narrow down that footprint a little bit and see what it might look like from an enterprise user trying to deploy production-grade clusters. So I'm keen to check that out. Has this booted back up again? Still taking its time there. Let's see if we can ping it. Can't ping it yet, so there's not a lot I can do right now. Alright, we're back. So that just takes a very, very long time. So I'm traditionally using, this was CentOS Stream 9 prior to this. It was a AAA compute node, and my other server's running Fedora server, and they definitely don't take this long to start. Let's check the Fedora server actually, because that's a more fair comparison. So we do systemd analyze time here. So yeah, this is up in 2 minutes. Systemd analyze lane. So the longest we have is the network manager wait online, which takes a minute. So let's check that once we can log back in here. So just looking at the monitor behind me, it's actually doing the network manager wait online right now. I haven't done any network configuration really on this node. I just configured a static IP for the first interface, but the other 2 interfaces that are normally in a bond, they're not configured to be bonds at the moment, so they're just picking up DHCP addresses from the same network. I mean, maybe that causes some delay. So maybe I should configure the networking on it and then see what that boot time is like. But yeah, this is very, very slow. I guess I'd like to get an understanding of what's taking so long there. So we do systemd analyze time here again. So yeah, 5 minutes. 5 minutes to boot is just insane. I thought maybe changing the multi-user target would speed that up a bit, but it doesn't seem to have helped. If anything, it made it worse. Let's take a look here. Yeah, this network D wait online is just taking a long time. I guess that's not network manager though, that's systemd network D. So maybe there's some differences there that I'm not considering. What is this? So what does this do? It looks like it is a binary. So I can't do too much with a binary. Let's see if we can find what that actually is in GitHub. Just run it and see what that does, I guess. Maybe once I configure that bond, if I use network D to configure the bond and give it a static IP, maybe it won't take as long once there's no DHCP involved. But yeah, I mean, 5 minutes to start is just insane to me. So yeah, 5 minutes to start just seems a bit crazy to me. If we can bring that down, great. I mean, it reached the multi-user target in 2 minutes, So if we could have that network up within that 2 minutes, that would be ideal. As long as I can access it, I don't care what else is starting in the background. So look, that's probably all I will touch on. I'll probably make a few more videos about my experience with Ubuntu 23.04 and the various things I'm going to try deploying on it. But let's just do a quick app update as well. Make sure we're all up to date here. So my next task for this node will be to probably deploy MAS, see if I can import this as like a pre-deployed node in MAS. I don't really want to configure DHCP for MAS. That will interrupt my own DHCP server and establish things that I have running on my network. So I don't want to do that, but I do want to be able to point Juju at this in one way or another to orchestrate deployments just in libvirt on top of this pre-deployed Ubuntu 23.04 server. So that'll be coming up in future videos. I hope that's at least a somewhat interesting insight to my history with learning Linux and the journey that I've taken to get here. I've used a bunch of other distros. I really just highlighted the ones that I stuck with. Like I used Arch for a while, I used Gentoo for a little while, OpenSUSE for a few months. They're all great experiences, but ultimately I've always come back to either Ubuntu or Fedora. Even did BSD for a little while. That was BSD, super interesting. Using BSD in like 2019 reminded me of that first experience with Fedora Core 3 way back in the day. Like just the community, it feels like a real enthusiast type community, whereas I guess Linux feels more established these days. The year of the Linux desktop. But yeah, hopefully interesting. Have any questions, let me know. I'd be super keen to hear about who uses Ubuntu. I know a lot of people that are watching my videos are using Red Hat products, but I'd be super interested to know if you do use Ubuntu and what you use it for and what your experience has been with Ubuntu, what your history has been with Ubuntu. Let me know.